One of Stan Lee's most famous quotes was, "Marvel has always been and always will be a reflection of the world right outside our window." This is especially true with the Disney Plus show The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. So let's discuss some of the grown-up issues the show tackled in its debut season. In the first episode, Sam Wilson goes to a local bank with his sister Sarah to get a loan to save their family business. Despite the fact that Sam is recognized as one of the Avengers who literally saved the universe, they are denied. Though the banker claims that this decision was made due to the end of the blip and the return of several billion people, the fact remains that in the world right outside our window, Black Americans are denied loans and mortgages at a significantly higher rate than white Americans. This is true even when they do everything right, have a good credit score and salary, and can place a sizable down payment. Traditionally, bank malfeasance has been one of the key methods used to segregate communities through practices like redlining and predatory loans. Even though he's an Avenger, Sam can't escape this reality. During the first episode, Bucky Barnes relives one of his many missions as the Winter Soldier during a nightmare. After killing an innocent bystander in the dream, Bucky wakes up, and viewers discover that he has been sleeping on the floor of his apartment. Fans of Captain America: The Winter Soldier might remember when this exact phenomena was referenced by Steve Rogers and Sam Wilson in their first conversation.
When I was over there, I sleep on the ground, use rock for pillows like a caveman. Now I'm home, lying in my bed, and it's like
lying on a marshmallow.
It's the first point of real connection between the two, and it makes sense for this series, which acts almost as a spiritual successor of that movie in many ways, to reference it. It also fits perfectly in line with the show's determination to incorporate real-world issues into its narrative. Bucky is clearly suffering from PTSD, and being unable to sleep is one of the most significant health concerns veterans have to face after returning from deployment. After meeting the Flag Smashers in Episode 2 and discovering they're super soldiers, Bucky takes Sam to meet Isaiah Bradley to discover how the super soldier serum might have returned. Isaiah is a super soldier who, in the comics, was the second person to become Captain America. Isaiah Bradley was one of a handful of black soldiers who were experimented on in the 1950s and given different variations of potential super soldier serum replacements. The scientists lied to them, telling them they were being given tetanus vaccines before sending them off on missions in the Korean War, during which Isaiah even managed to defeat and literally disarm the Winter Soldier. This narrative is the exact premise behind the real-world Tuskegee syphilis study, a medical research project that examined the effects of syphilis over the course of 40 years by purposefully injecting hundreds of black men in order to observe the course of the disease throughout their lives. They were lied to just like Isaiah was, and as a result, more than 100 of the men died because of the study, and many of their partners were unwittingly infected with the disease as well. During his talk with Sam, Isaiah also directly references Men in the Red Tails, the famous 332. These are the real-world Tuskegee Airmen, the famed all-black fighter squadron who fought in World War II. Isaiah mentions how they didn't come home to fame or thanks, but to racist persecution. After meeting Isaiah, Bucky and Sam begin walking through the neighborhood, as Sam struggles with what he's just learned. Their discussion is stopped in his tracks when two policemen pull up, ask Bucky if Sam is bothering him, and then demand to see Sam's ID. The police don't back down until Bucky finally points out Sam is the Falcon, and one of the police officers recognizes them as Avengers. The police then very calmly, politely, and apologetically arrest Bucky for missing his court-mandated therapy session, a stark contrast to the hostility they had just shown Sam. Racial profiling is one of America's oldest problems, and this scene is an excellent example of how inescapable it can be. A person's appearance, status, and clothing doesn't matter. It can happen to anyone, and there are many real-world examples that show this. The esteemed Georgia Congressman John Lewis was arrested more than 40 times throughout his life, even after he became a member of Congress. In 2009, Harvard professor Dr. Henry Louis Gates Jr. was arrested after accidentally locking himself out of his house. More recently, a black Army officer in Virginia was threatened by police officers and arrested in Virginia while in uniform. By far the most shocking image in the entirety of The Falcon and the Winter Soldier is the shot at the end of Episode 4, The Whole World is Watching. John Walker is standing and staring at hundreds of people while holding Captain America's shield. now covered in the blood of the defenseless, unarmed man he just murdered in a heated rage in broad daylight. Until this moment, Marvel has taken great pains to portray Captain America and his shield as symbols of pure heroism that represent the highest ideals that America often purports to stand for. By literally bloodying that very symbol, the image reminds the viewers of the many ways that America has fallen short of those values throughout its existence. More specifically, the entire sequence is reminiscent of one of the most constant news topics of the last year: police violence in America and the use of excessive force and violence. Walker killing a citizen of a foreign nation in a place where he likely had little or no jurisdiction also calls to mind the many instances of American interference in foreign policy. In Episode 5, John Walker loses the shield, is found guilty by a military court, and is stripped of the title of Captain America. During the hearing, he lashes out at the panel and exclaims that he lived his life by and dedicated it to their mandates, that he had been what they told him to be and done what they had trained him to do.
You built me.
In Walker's eyes, the government is punishing him for doing exactly what they wanted, not for murdering a man, but for doing it where others could see, for saying the quiet part out loud. This continues the idea that, unlike Steve Rogers, Walker's Captain America symbolizes the often dark reality of what America is, rather than the dream of what it could be. John Walker's crumbling mental state and his feelings of abandonment in that scene also speak to common failures of care that veterans experience when they return from deployment. Veterans with post-traumatic stress disorder are often left untreated, and many are completely unaware of how to access the mental health resources they have at their disposal. In Episode 5, a brief look at a painting is used as a transition shot before showing Sharon Carter speaking on the phone. The surface implication is that this is one of the many paintings that Carter has to sell on the black market. But as Reddit user Guy Erebus explains, there is a wealth of symbolism behind the use of this painting and its relation to the themes of the series. The Raft of the Medusa by Theodore Jericho depicts the aftermath of the wreck of the Medusa, a French Navy vessel that ran aground in 1816 due to incompetence of its captain, who had only received the position because of his connections to the French government. The captain used the ship's only lifeboats to save himself and the other officers, leaving the working-class sailors to starve on a hastily made raft for 13 days before they were finally rescued. When the painting was unveiled in 1819, it proved highly controversial for many of the same themes embraced in The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. The painting's apex features a black man working hand-in-hand with a white man while waving a flag, making its feature in this show quite appropriate. Additionally, John Walker is literally an incompetent captain chosen by a corrupt government who are withholding resources from and persecuting the working-class refugees created by the blip. When Sam Wilson debuted in Captain America: The Winter Soldier, the first and most telling trait they established for his character was that he was a counselor for veterans. This propels the entirety of his first conversation with Steve, and forms a significant part of the foundation of their friendship. Steve even seems to honor Sam in Avengers Endgame by working as a counselor himself. The series uses this background to shape Sam's character and his responses to the events surrounding him. When he first meets Carly, he empathizes with her and uses his training as a counselor in an attempt to talk her down and convince her to pursue her goals without violence. Similarly, when he practices using the shield with Bucky in Episode 5, Sam helps him work through his issues.
You gotta stop looking to other people to tell you who you are.
These scenes are some of the best moments in the series, showing audiences exactly why Sam will make such a good Captain America. As he says in Episode 6, he believes in the good in people, and his superpower is that he genuinely believes we can all do better. After his debut as the new Captain America at the end of the series, Sam Wilson visits Isaiah Bradley once again and explains why he took up the shield. Sam explains that after the pain and suffering people like Isaiah had gone through before Sam, that after so many African Americans had bled for the United States, he was not about to let anyone tell him that he couldn't fight for his country.
We built this country. Bled for it.
The 13 British colonies that would eventually become the United States were created, in part with the use of slave labor. When those 13 colonies became states, their struggling economy was boosted and aided by the now extensive and entrenched use of slave labor, especially in the South. This even continued after the American Civil War, via the practice of sharecropping. The Falcon and the Winter Soldier has multiple themes running throughout its 6 episodes, but at the heart of it all is one question: who makes someone a good Captain America? By focusing on this theme, the show pays homage to Cap's MCU debut in the first Avenger. Everything leading to Steve's transformation into a super soldier revolves around what makes someone a good choice for the program. As Dr. Erskine says, the serum takes what is already inside a person and amplifies it by giving them the power to finally act as they've always wished to.
Good becomes great. Bad becomes worse.
This is why Dr. Erskine rejects one soldier early in the film. Though he was a great soldier, he was a bully who would likely abuse any power he was given. Dr. Erskine urges Steve to remain, quote, not a perfect soldier, but a good man. These ideas forge the foundation of the entire series and explain why, when all is said and done, Sam Wilson is Captain America. The government chose John Walker because he was a perfect soldier, and it played out exactly as Dr. Erskine had feared. Even Bucky couldn't do it, because he's still trying to figure out who he is after spending decades as the Winter Soldier. Sam Wilson, however, is a good, humble person who just wants to help everybody he meets become better people. It's hard to argue with the idea that we'd all like to see that character trait amplified in those around us. Check out one of our newest videos right here. Plus, even more Looper videos about the Falcon and the Winter Soldier are coming soon. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell so you don't miss a single one.